A millionaire, haunted by a past of emptiness, encounters a humble woman struggling for survival at a street stall, and his unexpected gesture of protection forever changes both their destinies. Lee Jae-hyun watched Kim Min-ji from afar, her silhouette bent over the hot griddle, steam dancing in the cold night air. The image of her exhaustion and unyielding dignity etched itself into his mind. He, who possessed everything, felt an emptiness no fortune could fill. But seeing Min-ji, something stirred within him, an electric current that roused him from his golden lethargy. It wasn't pity, it was admiration, and an overwhelming desire to protect that stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished. He picked up his phone and dialed. Secretary Kim. His voice was deep, but laden with a new urgency. I need you to investigate someone for me. Kim Min-ji. She works at the tteokbokki stall on Gyeonggi Street. I want every detail about her financial situation, especially any hospital debt. Discreet. I needed it yesterday. As Secretary Kim began his task, Jae-hyun remained in his car watching. Min-ji coughed, covering her mouth with the sleeve of her thin coat. An impatient customer complained about the wait, and she apologized with a tired bow, her shoulders slumped under the invisible weight of her worries. Every movement was a silent lament, every forced smile, a mask for pain. Jae-hyun's heart ached. He could no longer be a mere spectator. Hours later, it was already dawn when Secretary Kim called back. His voice was professional, but with a tone of regret. Sir, the situation is dire. Her mother, Kim Yun-hee, has been hospitalized for months with a chronic illness. The accumulated hospital debt is astronomical, far beyond a street cook's ability to pay. They are threatening to transfer her mother to a lower-cost ward, or worse, send her home without proper treatment. Jae-hyun felt a knot in his throat. How much? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. 150 million won, sir, and it's still growing. To Jae-hyun, it was an amount he spent on a business dinner. To Min-ji, it was an insurmountable mountain threatening to crush her family. Prepare the transfer, Jae-hyun ordered, the decision firm in his voice. Pay the debt in full, anonymously for now, and schedule a meeting with the hospital director. I want to ensure that Ms. Kim Yun-hee receives the best possible treatment without interruption. The next day, Jae-hyun decided to act personally. He couldn't just pay the debt and disappear. He needed to see her, to speak with her. He approached the tteokbokki stall late in the afternoon when the crowd thinned. Min-ji was cleaning the griddle, her face smudged with soot and exhaustion. Good evening, he said, his voice soft, yet with an undeniable authority. Min-ji looked up, surprised. An impeccably dressed man with an intense gaze stood at her humble stall. She felt a chill, not just from the cold. Good evening, sir. Can I help you? Yes, Jae-hyun replied, his eyes fixed on hers. I wish to speak with you, Kim Min-ji. She dropped the cloth, distrust evident in her eyes. How do you know my name? I don't know you. No, you don't know me, he admitted. But I know you. I've watched you, and I know about your mother's debt. Min-ji's face paled, her eyes widened, a mixture of shock and humiliation. What? Who are you? Why are you saying this? I don't need your charity. Her voice, though low, carried a silent fury, a wounded pride that refused to yield. Jae-hyun took a step forward, his expression serious, but with a glint of determination. It's not charity, Min-ji. It's a proposal. I've seen your struggle, your resilience. You deserve more than this, and your mother deserves the treatment she needs. He paused, letting his words hang in the cold air. I've already paid her hospital debt. Min-ji stumbled backward, struck by the revelation. The shock was so profound she could barely breathe. The mountain that had been crushing her had disappeared. Why? And who was this man who dared to invade her life with such an overwhelming gesture? Her eyes, previously full of weariness, now burned with desperate confusion and a flicker of hope she barely dared to feel. Her world, once so predictable in its misery, had just been turned upside down. Why? You paid? Her voice was a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible above the distant hum of the city. That's impossible. Who are you to do such a thing? I didn't ask anyone for anything. Incredulity quickly turned into a silent fury, a shield against the vulnerability that overwhelmed her. Her fiercely guarded pride felt violated. Jae-hyun took another step, closing the distance between them. His eyes, previously intense, now held an almost gentle seriousness. I am Lee Jae-hyun, CEO of Shinhwa Group, and I did this, Minji, because I saw your struggle. It's not charity that diminishes you. It's a recognition of your strength, your unyielding dignity. Minji let out a bitter, humorless laugh. CEO of Shinhwa Group? And what does a man like you want from a street cook? People like you don't do anything without an ulterior motive, without a bill to be paid. What's the price, Mr. Lee? What do you want in return? Distrust was a poison running through her veins, protecting her from the pain of potential disappointment. Jae-hyun sighed, patience evident on his face. He knew it wouldn't be easy. I want your mother to receive the treatment she deserves without the worry of being transferred or having her treatment interrupted. And I want you to have the chance to live without this crushing burden that consumes you day after day. He paused, allowing his words to settle. The proposal I mentioned isn't payment for the debt, Minji. It's an opportunity, a way for you not to feel indebted, but to build something new with your own merit. Minji's eyes studied him, searching for any sign of falsehood, but finding only unyielding determination. The relief for her mother was a balm to her wounded soul, but the fear of the unknown and the shadow of obligation kept her on guard. What kind of opportunity? She asked, her voice still laced with suspicion. I have a project in mind, Jae-hyun began, his voice taking on a more professional tone, yet still with a personal note. A new restaurant concept that seeks the authenticity of street food, but with a touch of sophistication and excellence. I need someone with genuine passion and talent, someone who understands the soul of food, who knows how to transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary. I've watched you, Minji. You have that. I want you to be the head chef for this project. Minji fell silent, processing the words. Head chef? She, a tteokbokki cook at a dirty stall, being offered a position as head chef at a millionaire CEO's restaurant. It seemed like a delusion, a cruel joke. But Jae-hyun's gaze was serious, unwavering. I don't understand, she stammered, her mind reeling. Why me? There are thousands of more qualified chefs in Seoul. Why come to me, a nobody? Because you are not a nobody, Minji, Jae-hyun retorted, his voice firm. You are a woman who, despite all adversity, refuses to give up. Your food has soul, it has history, and that's what I'm looking for. Not impeccable resumes, but heart and resilience. He extended a business card. Think about it. There's no immediate commitment, but I'd like to discuss the details with you. Tomorrow, if you can, at my office. Minji took the card automatically, feeling the weight of the glossy paper in her soiled palm. The Shinhwa Group logo seemed to glow in the dim light of the night, a portal to a world she had never imagined touching. Her mother's debt was paid. Her mother was safe. And now, a proposal that could change her life forever. She looked at Jae-hyun, who watched her with a mixture of expectation and something deeper, something she couldn't decipher. The fear of being manipulated fought against the overwhelming hope of a future that, minutes ago, was unthinkable. The tteokbokki stall, her refuge and her prison, seemed to shrink around her. The silence stretched heavy with the magnitude of the decision hanging in the air. Minji felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. What would she do now? Accept the extended hand of this powerful stranger, or continue to fight alone, even if the mountain had been removed? The chapter of her life of misery had ended, but the next, uncertain and frightening, had just begun. What would she do now? She clutched the business card in her hand, feeling the raised Xinhua Group logo. It was real, not a feverish dream of exhaustion. Her mother's debt paid. That suffocating weight that prevented her from breathing, that made her work to exhaustion, that stole her sleep and her hope, had vanished. A solitary tear traced a path down her soiled face, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from a relief so profound it hurt. "Why?" she whispered, her voice choked. Raising her eyes to Jae-hyun, it was no longer a question of distrust, but of pure perplexity. "Why would you do this for me? I have nothing to offer in return." Jae-hyun took a step forward, and Minji didn't recoil this time. He stopped at a respectful distance, his eyes fixed on hers, conveying a sincerity that slowly disarmed her. "Minji, I'm not looking for direct payment. I'm looking for something more. I saw the passion in your eyes when you talk about your food, even when you're exhausted. I saw the dignity with which you face every humiliation. That is priceless." He gestured lightly towards the stall, to the humble environment that surrounded her. "You are trapped here, not for lack of talent, but by circumstances. I'm offering a bridge so you can use your talent, so your mother can have the peace of mind of proper treatment, and so you can have the life you deserve." Minji shook her head, still struggling to process. "But, head chef, I only make tteokbokki and gyeomuk. I have no formal training, no experience in luxury restaurants. It's madness." "It's not madness," Jae-hyun replied calmly, but with a firmness that allowed no questioning. "It's a vision. The best restaurants have forgotten the soul of food. They've gotten lost in technique and presentation, but lost the essence. You, Minji, have the essence. You know what it is to cook with heart, with the history of a people. I don't want you to change who you are. I want you to bring that authenticity to a new level." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "Think of your mother. Think of the peace she will have knowing you are safe, that you no longer need to sacrifice yourself this way. Think of what you can do with your talent without the burden of debt." The mention of her mother struck Minji at her most sensitive point. The image of her mother, weak and pale in her hospital bed, but always with an encouraging smile, flooded her mind. The idea that her mother could finally have peace, that she would no longer be a constant worry, was a powerful argument. "What if I fail?" Minji asked, her voice almost a whisper, the fear of the unknown mingling with hope. "What if I'm not good enough for your new restaurant concept?" Jae-hyun smiled, a small, almost imperceptible smile, but one that softened the intensity of his gaze. "I wouldn't have sought you out if I didn't believe in you, Minji. Failing is part of the process of learning and growing. I will be there to support the project, but the passion and talent, those come from you." He took a step back, once again creating distance between them. "The card has my office address and my personal number. Think about my proposal. There's no pressure, but the opportunity is here. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, if you decide to come, I'll be waiting. If not, I'll understand." Minji looked at the card, then at Jae-hyun. His imposing figure in his impeccable suit seemed like a being from another world amidst the smoke and smell of tteokbokki. Her mind was in a whirlwind. The dignity she so cherished prevented her from accepting charity, but this was an opportunity, a chance to fight for her mother in a different way, to fight for herself. The cold night wind blew, and she felt a shiver. It wasn't just from the cold. It was the sensation of standing on the edge of a precipice, with a leap into the unknown before her. But for the first time in a long time, it wasn't a precipice of despair, but of possibility. I'll be there, she said, her voice firmer than she expected. At 10. Jae-hyun nodded, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. Until tomorrow, Minji. He turned and walked towards his dark car, disappearing into the night. Minji remained standing, the business card clutched in her hand, the smell of tteokbokki now mixed with the subtle, expensive aroma of Jae-hyun's cologne. Her world had changed in a matter of minutes. The mountain had been removed, and a new one, even more daunting but full of promise, appeared on the horizon. She had a decision to make, a future to face, and for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of genuine hope. The silence that followed Jae-hyun's departure was no longer the oppressive silence of loneliness, but a deafening vacuum filled only by the echo of his words. Minji remained motionless, the business card still clutched in her hand, the raised Shinhwa Group logo imprinted on her skin. The night breeze, once biting, now seemed to carry a promise, a whisper of change. Her mother's debt, paid. The phrase reverberated in her mind, an impossible melody, the suffocating weight that had chained her for years, that forced her to work to exhaustion, that stole her sleep and her hope, had vanished. It was a relief so profound it hurt, a liberation that left her dizzy. Why? She whispered again into the empty air, her voice choked. There was no more distrust, only overwhelming perplexity. Why him? Why her? She looked at the stall, her refuge and her prison. The smell of tteokbokki and yeomuk, once so familiar and comforting, now seemed like a vestige of a life that might no longer be hers. The pans, the utensils, every oil stain and every scratch on the wood told the story of her struggle. And now that story was about to take a completely different turn. With hands that trembled slightly, Minji began to close the stall. Every movement was automatic, but her mind was in a whirlwind. The image of Jae-hyun, impeccable in his suit, contrasted sharply with her world of smoke and sweat. He offered a bridge to a universe she had never dared to dream of. Head chef. She, Kim Min-ji, the street cook, in a luxury restaurant. It seemed like a delusion. The walk home was a blur. The city lights, once just an indifferent backdrop to her misery, now seemed to flicker with a new intensity, as if announcing the magnitude of the decision she had made. She arrived at her small rented room, a cramped and damp space she shared with memories of her mother before her illness. She threw herself onto the bed, exhausted, but sleep wouldn't come. The conversation with Jae-hyun replayed in her mind, every word, every inflection. He seemed genuine. His proposal, though audacious, didn't have the tone of charity. He spoke of talent, passion, authenticity, and the mention of her mother, of the peace she could have, was an irrefutable argument. What if I fail? The question haunted her. She had no formal training, no experience in professional kitchens. Her art was intuitive, forged in necessity and tradition. But what had he said? I wouldn't have sought you out if I didn't believe in you. The night dragged on, punctuated by sighs and tossing and turning. Minji got up and went to the small window, watching the sleeping city. The fear of the unknown was palpable, but for the first time in a long time, it was accompanied by a flicker of hope. It wasn't naive hope, but hope forged in resilience, in the belief that perhaps, just perhaps, she could be more than life had forced her to be. At dawn, weariness still weighed on her shoulders, but there was a new determination in her eyes. She washed herself with cold water, her face pale and her eyes a little swollen. She opened her small wardrobe, looking for the most presentable clothes she owned. A simple cotton blouse and dark pants, clean and ironed, were the best she had. There was no makeup to hide the marks of exhaustion, no jewelry to adorn, just her in her essence. Jae-hyun's business card lay on the table, the Shinhwa Group logo appearing even more imposing in the morning light. The address was there, a portal to a world she only knew from the news. She left home, her heart pounding in her chest. The neighborhood was still in its slow rhythm of waking, but Minji felt like she was in a race against time. She took the bus, watching the landscape gradually change, from narrow streets and bustling markets to wide avenues and imposing buildings. Every kilometer took her further from her old life and closer to an uncertain future. When the bus stopped near the financial district, Minji got off, feeling small and out of place. The Shinwa Group building rose before her, a giant of glass and steel that seemed to touch the sky. Its modern and imposing architecture was a stark contrast to the teokbokki stall she had left behind. She took a deep breath, smelling coffee and expensive cars in the air. The people around her, in their impeccable suits and designer clothes, seemed to belong to another species. Minji clutched the strap of her worn bag, feeling like an intruder, but the image of her mother, her faint smile, the hope in her eyes, propelled her forward. With hesitant steps, she walked through the revolving doors and entered the grand lobby. The polished marble reflected the light, and the silence was broken only by the soft sound of distant conversations and the click of heels. An elegant receptionist, with a professional smile, watched her approach. "Good morning," Minji said, her voice a little more shaky than she would have liked. "I have an appointment with Mr. Lee Jae-hyun at 10. The receptionist consulted her tablet, and a slight smile of recognition appeared on her lips. "Ah yes, Ms. Kim Minji. Mr. Lee is waiting. Please follow me." Minji followed the receptionist to a mirrored elevator. As it ascended, she observed her own reflection. A young woman in simple clothes, her hair tied in a ponytail, but with a glint of determination in her eyes. The fear was still there, but hope, now, was stronger. The next chapter of her life was about to begin, and she was ready to turn the page. The elevator ascended in an almost reverent silence, broken only by the soft hum of the machine and the faint crackle of her own nerves. Minji watched her reflection in the polished mirror, a small and somewhat disheveled figure amidst the opulence. She clutched the strap of her bag even tighter, feeling cold sweat on her palms. Each floor that passed was a step away from her old life, and each floor increased the vertigo of change. The glint of determination in her eyes was the only thing preventing her from succumbing to panic. The doors opened with a discreet ding, revealing a wide, illuminated corridor, decorated with abstract artworks and exotic plants. Another receptionist, as impeccable as the one downstairs, waited with a warm smile. "Ms. Kim, Mr. Lee is expecting you. Please, this way." Minji followed her, her footsteps echoing on the thick carpet. At each door they passed, she glimpsed modern offices, people working on state-of-the-art computers, a world of efficiency and power that left her breathless. Finally, the receptionist stopped before a dark wooden door and knocked lightly. "Mr. Lee, Ms. Kim has arrived." A deep, familiar voice replied, "Come in." The receptionist opened the door, and Minji hesitated for a moment before crossing the threshold. Jae-hyun's office was vast, with an entire glass wall offering a panoramic view of Seoul, a carpet of skyscrapers stretching to the horizon. The dark, polished wooden desk was impeccably organized, with only a laptop and a few documents. Jae-hyun stood by the window, hands in his suit pants pockets, observing the city. He turned as she entered. "Minji," he said, his voice calm but with an intensity that made her hold her breath. His eyes, which the night before seemed to penetrate her soul, now watched her with a mixture of expectation and something more subtle, almost a recognition. "Thank you for coming." Minji made a hurried bow, feeling awkward. "Mr. Lee, please sit." He indicated one of the two leather armchairs in front of his desk. He waited for her to settle before sitting in the other, not behind the desk, but beside her, lowering the physical and, in a way, the hierarchical barrier. "I imagine it was a long night," he began, a slight smile playing on his lips, "but I'm glad you decided to take this step." Minji nodded, words caught in her throat. She looked at her own hands, clasped in her lap. I thought a lot about my mother. I understand, Jae-hyun said, his voice soft. Let's get straight to the point then. Your mother's debt. I have already instructed my legal and financial team. They will contact the hospital today to settle the full amount. Don't worry about the details. Everything will be handled discreetly and efficiently. You won't have to get involved in bureaucracy. The air seemed to thin. Minji looked up, incredulous. Today? But how? It's an investment, Minji, he repeated, his voice firm. An investment in your talent, in your passion. It's not charity. I believe you have something unique to offer, and I am willing to bet on it. The debt is just the first step to free you so you can focus on what truly matters, your art. The mention of her art struck her. It was the first time anyone had referred to her work with such reverence. Tears threatened to come, but she held them back. And the restaurant? She managed to ask, her voice still a whisper. Jae-hyun leaned slightly, his eyes fixed on hers. The concept is a restaurant that celebrates authentic Korean cuisine, but with a modern and sophisticated approach. We don't want pretentious dishes, but rather dishes that tell a story, that evoke memories, that have soul. And that's exactly what you do with your tteokbokki and your yeolmuk. We want to elevate that essence, give it the stage it deserves. He paused, allowing the words to settle. You will be the head chef. You will have creative freedom to develop the menu, to infuse your own identity into each dish. My design and marketing team will work with you to create an environment that complements your vision. It won't be easy, Minji. It will be an immense challenge, but you won't be alone. I will be there to support the project every step of the way. Minji looked at him, at the vastness of the office, at the city outside. Everything seemed surreal. The mountain of debt which had been crushing her was being removed with frightening ease. And in its place, a new mountain, that of a colossal opportunity, rose. The fear was still there, a knot in her stomach, but hope, now, was a fire burning stronger. I accept, she said, her voice clearer and firmer than before. I accept the proposal, Mr. Lee. I will do my best. I won't disappoint you. A genuine smile, small but visible, touched Jae-hyun's lips. It was a smile that softened the intensity of his gaze, revealing a glimpse of the person behind the CEO. I know you won't, Minji. Welcome to the team. He extended his hand to her. Minji hesitated for a second, then extended her own, small and calloused, to shake his, strong and confident. The touch was brief, but laden with immense meaning. It was the handshake that sealed a new destiny, the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The next chapter of her life wasn't just about to begin, it had just been written. Minji withdrew her hand, feeling a lingering warmth where Jae-hyun's skin had touched hers. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but the feeling of relief, of a mountain being lifted from her shoulders, was even greater. She couldn't tear her gaze away from his eyes, which seemed to see through her facade of calm. Excellent, Jae-hyun said, his voice now lighter, almost a murmur of satisfaction. I'm sure you won't regret it. Now let's move on to the next steps. He stood and went to his desk, picking up an internal phone. Please call Ms. Park and Mr. Choi. Minji watched him, her heart still beating erratically. In a few minutes, the door opened and two people entered, a middle-aged woman with a serious demeanor and elegant glasses, and a younger man with a friendly smile and a briefcase in his hands. Ms. Park, Mr. Choi, Jae-hyun introduced, gesturing to Minji. This is Ms. Kim Minji. She will be the head chef for our new restaurant project. Ms. Park, you will handle all legal and financial procedures related to Ms. Kim's mother's hospital debt. I want everything resolved today, without fail. Mr. Choi, our project manager for the food and beverage sector will be your main contact for the restaurant's development. Ms. Park nodded, her gaze assessing Min-ji with a mixture of curiosity and professionalism. Understood, Mr. Lee. Ms. Kim, please provide me with the hospital details and your mother's medical records. I will handle everything personally. Min-ji, still a little dazed, handed her a small piece of paper with the information. It was the first time she had shared these details with anyone outside the family, and the ease with which Ms. Park accepted them was almost shocking. And you, Mr. Choi, Jae-hyun continued, turning to the man, I want you to present Ms. Kim with the initial concept of the space and start discussing menu ideas. Remember, her vision is paramount. Our goal is to bring her cuisine to life. Mr. Choi smiled warmly at Min-ji. It's a pleasure to meet you, Chef Kim. I'm very excited about this project. I've heard great things about your cooking. Chef Kim, the word echoed in Min-ji's mind. It was a title she never imagined she would have. She blushed slightly, but composed herself. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Choi. Jae-hyun watched the interaction, an almost imperceptible glint in his eyes. He seemed pleased with how things were unfolding. Min-ji, Ms. Park will accompany you so you can provide the necessary documents. Afterwards, Mr. Choi will take you to see the provisional location where we will do the first tastings and tests. Don't worry about anything other than your creativity. Ms. Park stepped forward. If you'll permit me, Mr. Lee, I'd like to speak with Ms. Kim privately for a few minutes to expedite the procedures. Jae-hyun nodded. Of course. Mr. Choi, please wait in the adjoining meeting room. When the door closed again, leaving only Min-ji and Ms. Park, the atmosphere became more formal. Ms. Park, with a folder in hand, began to explain the terms of the agreement clearly and concisely. Ms. Kim, Shinwa Group is investing in your talent. Your mother's debt will be settled as part of this investment. In return, you will be hired as head chef with a competitive salary and profit sharing in the restaurant. There will be a formal contract, of course, but Mr. Lee requested that your immediate peace of mind be the priority. Min-ji listened, absorbing every word. It was all so fast, so grand. She felt a knot in her throat, a mixture of gratitude and a pang of anxiety. I understand. Thank you very much, Ms. Park. You're welcome. It's our job, Ms. Park replied emotionlessly but efficiently. I need a copy of your mother's ID and any hospital documents proving the debt. I can arrange a taxi to take you home to get those documents if you wish. No, I have them with me, Min-ji said, pulling a small, crumpled folder from her bag. She had carried these papers for months, the constant proof of her burden. Now they were the key to her freedom. As Ms. Park examined the documents, Jae-hyun opened the door again. Ms. Park, do we have everything? I want Ms. Kim to be able to focus on the project as quickly as possible. Yes, Mr. Lee, the documents are sufficient. I will begin the procedures immediately. Ms. Kim can proceed with Mr. Choi. Jae-hyun turned to Min-ji, a subtle smile on his lips. See, one less burden. Now, let's create something extraordinary. Min-ji felt a shiver. This man not only rescued her, he propelled her towards a future she had never dared to dream of. Uncertainty still existed, but the flame of hope, now fueled by Jae-hyun's confidence, burned stronger than ever. She was ready for the challenge. Min-ji followed Mr. Choi out of Jae-hyun's office, the echo of the words Chef Kim still resonating in her mind. It was a strange, almost alien sound, but one that carried the weight of recognition and a future she could barely conceive. Ms. Park had already said goodbye, promising that the debt would be resolved before lunch. The ease with which the mountain that had been crushing her was pulverized was disconcerting. This way, Chef Kim, Mr. Choi said, his smile friendly and genuine. He guided her down a different corridor, away from the bustle of the executive offices, towards a more secluded area of the building. Mr. Lee insisted that you have a suitable space to start developing your ideas. It's a provisional location, of course, but with everything you need. Minji nodded, trying to process the avalanche of information. Her body was still tense, but the stiffness in her shoulders began to ease. The air felt lighter, the pressure in her chest, which she hadn't even known she carried until now, diminished with each step. They stopped in front of a frosted glass door. Mr. Choi opened it, revealing a spacious and illuminated area. It wasn't a complete restaurant, but a state-of-the-art industrial kitchen, with gleaming stainless steel countertops, combi ovens, induction cooktops, and a variety of utensils she had only seen on television shows. There was also a small tasting area with an elegant table and a few chairs. "This is your laboratory, so to speak," Mr. Choi explained, gesturing with his hand. "Here you will have complete freedom to experiment, create, and refine your dishes. Our supply team is already aware of your needs and can provide any ingredient you require. The restaurant's concept is to celebrate the authenticity of Korean cuisine, but with an elevated presentation and experience. Mr. Lee believes your approach is perfect for this." Minji walked slowly inside, her eyes scanning every detail. The smell of cleanliness and new metal was the opposite of the aroma of hot oil and spices from her street cart. It was a culinary sanctuary, a stage she never imagined stepping onto. She touched the cold surface of a countertop, feeling the solidity and promise of the place. It's incredible," she murmured, her voice choked. "I never imagined anything like this." "Mr. Lee has a very clear vision for this project," Mr. Choi said, his tone now serious. "He is not just investing in a restaurant, he is investing in a philosophy. He wants people to experience the soul of Korean cuisine through your hands, and he trusts you to make that happen." He led her to the tasting area. "Let's sit down for a bit and talk about your initial ideas. There's no pressure. Chef Kim. Just a conversation to align expectations and start charting the path." Minji sat down, still a little dazed. Mr. Choi opened his briefcase, taking out some architectural sketches and a tablet. "We envisioned an environment that combines modern elegance with traditional Korean touches, something that is both welcoming and sophisticated. And the menu, well, the menu is where your magic comes in." He looked at her expectantly. Minji took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. For years, her cooking had been a matter of survival, of feeding her mother and paying debts. Now it was an art, a passion to be explored. I've always wanted to show that street food, home cooking, has a depth that is often underestimated," she began, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke about what she loved. "Tteokbokki isn't just a snack, it's comfort, it's memory. Iomuki can be simple, but the quality of the broth, the freshness of the fish, all of that makes a difference. I envision dishes that capture that essence, but elevate it. Perhaps a tteokbokki with a more complex sauce, premium ingredients, but still retaining that familiar warmth. Or a bibimbap, with seasonal vegetables, high-quality meats, but maintaining the harmony of flavors." As Minji spoke, her eyes sparkled. Her initial shyness gave way to an ardent passion. Mr. Choi listened attentively, taking notes on his tablet. "That's exactly what Mr. Lee has in mind, Chef Kim," he said, a wide smile on his face. "The essence, the soul, you have a clear vision. I'm very excited to see what you will create." The conversation extended for over an hour, with Minji detailing ideas for appetizers, main courses, and even desserts, all rooted in Korean cuisine, but with an innovative touch. When Mr. Choi finally stood up, he seemed genuinely impressed. "Well, Chef Kim, I think we have an excellent starting point. I'll organize the design team to start working on the restaurant's visual concepts based on your ideas. And tomorrow, we can start testing some of your dishes here. How does that sound? Minji felt a warmth spread through her chest. Tomorrow? Yes, perfect. She left the building with Mr. Choi, who dropped her off in a company-paid taxi. As the car drove away, Minji looked back at the imposing Xinhua building. It was the place where her life had changed forever. At home, the small apartment looked the same, but the atmosphere was different. The air was no longer heavy with the shadow of debt. She picked up the phone and dialed her mother's number. Oma, the debt? It's paid, all of it. I got a new job, a restaurant. I'll be the head chef. The words tumbled out, and Minji felt the tears she had held back all day finally roll down. They weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming relief, of gratitude, and of a hope she never thought she would feel again. On the other end of the line, her mother's weak voice cried with joy, "Minji, my daughter, you saved me and yourself. I knew you could do it." Minji hung up, the phone still in her trembling hand. She looked at the night sky through the window. The mountain had been removed. Now, a new journey was beginning, a journey that promised not only prosperity, but also the fulfillment of a dream she had long buried. And at the center of it all was Lee Jae-hyun, the man who with a single gesture had rewritten her destiny. The image of his subtle smile, of his intense gaze, remained in her mind, a constant reminder of the silent strength that propelled her forward. That night, Minji slept soundly for the first time in years. Her sleep was not disturbed by nightmares of debt or the anxiety of the next day. Instead, she dreamed of vibrant colors, the aroma of exotic spices, and the sound of pots clanging in a spacious, brightly lit kitchen. She woke to the morning sun, filtering through the thin curtains of her small room, feeling a lightness in her chest that surprised her. The reality of her new life still felt like a dream, but the sense of relief was palpable. Upon arriving at the Xinhua building the next morning, Minji felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. The doorman, who had previously looked at her with curiosity, now greeted her with a respectful smile. Mr. Choi was waiting for her in the lobby, his demeanor friendly and encouraging. "Good morning, Chef Kim. Ready for your first official day?" "Good morning, Mr. Choi." "I think so," Minji replied, a genuine smile appearing on her lips. They proceeded to the culinary laboratory. Upon entering, Minji felt the same fascination as the day before, but now with a purpose. The stainless steel countertops didn't seem so intimidating, the combi ovens not so complex. They were tools, and she was an artisan ready to use them. "The supply team is already aware of your needs," Mr. Choi explained, pointing to a refrigerated storage area. "We have a selection of fresh, high-quality ingredients. If you need anything specific, just let us know." Minji nodded, her eyes scanning the shelves. Impeccable vegetables, premium cuts of meat, sauces and seasonings she had only seen in luxury stores. The difference from the ingredients she used in her cart was striking. "I'd like to start with some classics," she said, her voice gaining firmness. "I want to show how we can elevate tteokbokki and eomuktang." Mr. Choi smiled. "Excellent. Mr. Lee has always emphasized the importance of maintaining the soul of Korean cuisine." Minji put on a clean apron provided by the company and tied her hair back. With hands that once handled ingredients in precarious conditions, she now touched fresh vegetables and tender meats with reverence. She began to prepare the broth for the yeomuktang, using high-quality anchovies, radishes, and kombu seaweed, simmering them slowly to extract maximum flavor. For the tteokbokki, she selected artisanal gochujang, vibrant in color and complex in aroma, and began to prepare a sauce that combined sweetness and spiciness in a balanced way, adding a touch of beef broth for depth. As she worked, time seemed to fly. The kitchen, once silent, now filled with the soft sound of knives chopping, the bubbling of broths, and the tempting aroma of spices. Minji was in her element, the passion that had been stifled by necessity, now flourishing freely. She experimented, adjusted, tasted again. Every movement was deliberate, every ingredient, an opportunity to create something special. Mr. Choi watched closely, but without interfering, only taking notes on his tablet. When Minji finally presented the two dishes, elegantly arranged in ceramic bowls, he approached the tasting table. "Please, Mr. Choi," she said, a slight blush on her cheeks. He picked up the chopsticks and tasted the eomuk tang first. His eyes widened slightly. The broth, it's incredibly clean and deep. The eomuk is soft but with a pleasant texture. This is comforting and sophisticated at the same time. Next, he tasted the tteokbokki. The glistening sauce coated the perfectly cooked rice cakes. The balance of the sauce is perfect, Chef Kim. It's not just spicy, there's a subtle sweetness and a complexity that elevates the dish to another level. It's familiar, yet completely new. He looked at her, a wide, genuine smile on his face. "Mr. Lee will be impressed. You've captured the essence he was looking for." The validation was more than just a compliment. It was confirmation that she was on the right track, that her vision was understood and valued. "Thank you, Mr. Choi. There's still a lot to refine, but it's a start." "An excellent start," he corrected. "We'll continue tomorrow. For today, you've already done an incredible job. Rest, Chef Kim. You deserve it." As she left the Xinhua building, Minji looked at the night sky again. There was no longer the shadow of debt, but rather the promise of a bright future. She was exhausted, but not with the crushing exhaustion she had known before. It was the satisfying exhaustion of a day well spent, of a passion rediscovered. And, in her thoughts, the image of Jae-hyun, the man who had ignited that flame, remained like a guiding star, silent and powerful. The journey was just beginning, and she was ready for every step. The following days were a whirlwind of aromas, textures, and flavors. Minji dove headfirst into the culinary laboratory, experimenting, adjusting, and refining each dish with a dedication that bordered on obsession. She discovered that, with high-quality ingredients and the freedom to create, her cooking transcended mere subsistence. The bibimbap gained new layers with a homemade fermented gochujang sauce and organic vegetables that burst with freshness. The japchae, once an occasional celebratory dish, transformed into a symphony of colors and textures, with perfectly elastic sweet potato noodles and a subtle hint of toasted sesame oil. Mr. Choi continued to observe her, his smile widening with each new tasting. He took detailed notes, and Minji realized that his reports to Mr. Lee must have been positive. With every compliment, every constructive suggestion, Minji's confidence blossomed. She was no longer the humiliated street cook. She was Chef Kim, an artist in her own right. A week later, Mr. Choi approached her with a different glint in his eyes. "Chef Kim, Mr. Lee would like to have a personal tasting of some of your dishes tomorrow. He's very interested in seeing the progress." A shiver ran down Minji's spine. She had thought of Jae-hyun constantly, his gaze, his smile, the way he had changed her life. But the idea of cooking for him, of having her work judged by him, brought a new wave of nervousness. "Tomorrow?" "Of course, Mr. Choi. Which dishes would he like to taste?" "He left it to your discretion. He wants to see what you consider the best of your vision so far." That night, Minji could barely sleep. She mentally reviewed every recipe, every technique. She wanted everything to be perfect, not just for the restaurant's success, but for him, for Lee Jae-hyun. The next morning, the kitchen seemed to carry a different electricity. Minji chose the elevated tteokbokki, the eomuk tang with its deep broth, and a bibimbap that was a visual and gustatory work of art. She worked with almost surgical precision, every cut, every seasoning, every arrangement on the plate done with the utmost attention. When the clock struck the appointed hour, the laboratory door opened. Lee Jae-hyun entered, accompanied by Mr. Choi. He wore an impeccable suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. His eyes met Min-ji's, and a subtle, almost imperceptible smile appeared on his lips. "Good morning, Chef Kim," he said, his voice calm and deep. "Good morning, Mr. Lee," Min-ji replied, feeling a blush rise to her face. She gestured to the tasting table where the dishes were arranged. "I've prepared some of the dishes I developed this week." Jae-hyun sat down, and Mr. Choi positioned himself beside him, tablet ready. Min-ji felt her heart race. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the broth. "It's like a warm hug," he commented, opening his eyes and looking at Min-ji. "Clean, yet with a complexity I didn't expect." Next, the tteokbokki. He picked up a rice cake, the sauce glistening under the lights. The balance is remarkable, spicy, sweet, and with an umami that makes you want more. This is the soul of street food, but with a refinement that elevates it. Finally, the bibimbap. He carefully mixed the colorful ingredients, took a portion and tasted it. The vegetables are incredibly fresh, and the sauce. It's the star. It brings everything together in perfect harmony. He put down the chopsticks and looked directly at Min-ji. "Chef Kim, this is more than I expected. You haven't just elevated these dishes, you've reinvented them without losing their essence." Min-ji felt immense relief, mixed with a strange euphoria. "Thank you, Mr. Lee. I just wanted to show the potential of our cuisine." "And you succeeded," he said, his intense gaze fixed on her. "What is your vision for the full menu? What else do you dream of creating?" The question caught her by surprise. It wasn't just about the dishes she had made, but about what she dreamed. Min-ji took a deep breath, the passion in her voice growing. "I envision a place where people can experience Korea in every bite, dishes that tell stories, that evoke memories. I want to use seasonal ingredients, modern techniques, but always with respect for tradition. Perhaps a kimchi jjigae with Iberian pork, or a galbi-jjim with a reduced sauce and a hint of red wine. Korean cuisine is vast and full of possibilities." Jae-hyun listened attentively, a small smile playing on his lips. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Chef Kim. A vision, a passion. You have a gift." He stood up, and Min-ji felt a pang of disappointment, thinking the conversation would end, but he took a step closer. "Keep creating. Keep dreaming. I look forward to seeing what else you will bring to the table." He turned to Mr. Choi. "Mr. Choi, please expedite the design process and ensure that Chef Kim has everything she needs. No limits." Jae-hyun nodded to Min-ji and left, his presence leaving a vacuum in the air, but also a persistent warmth. Min-ji stood there, her heart still pounding. The validation of her work was immense. But Jae-hyun's gaze, the way he had listened to her, the way he encouraged her to dream, that was something deeper. It was a connection she didn't know how to name, but one that propelled her forward, a constant reminder that her destiny was irrevocably intertwined with his. The journey was just beginning, and she felt that with each step she was approaching not only her dream, but also the man who had made it possible. Mr. Choi approached Min-ji, a warm smile on his face. "Chef Kim, Mr. Lee is truly impressed. He doesn't usually express so much enthusiasm." He paused, looking at her with genuine admiration. "You have something special, and with his support there are no limits to what you can create." Jae-hyun's words echoed in Min-ji's mind. No limits. It was a freedom she had never known, a blank canvas on which to paint her culinary dreams. She felt a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, euphoria, and a palpable nervousness. It wasn't just the pressure of such a grand project, but the awareness that every step, every decision, brought her even closer to Jae-hyun. The following days turned into weeks of intense and passionate work. The culinary laboratory became her second home. Min-ji dove into menu creation, exploring combinations of flavors, textures, and presentations that honored Korean tradition while elevating it to a high gastronomic level. She experimented with rare ingredients, innovative techniques, and the art of harmonization. Mr. Choi became her right-hand man, an experienced advisor and an attentive listener. Together, they interviewed and selected a talented kitchen team, people who shared the same passion and respect for cuisine. In parallel, the restaurant's design took shape. Min-ji actively participated in every meeting, from material selection to the layout of the kitchen and dining room. She envisioned a space that was both elegant and welcoming, reflecting the soul of her cuisine. The restaurant's name, Jiwa, a paper flower symbolizing ephemeral beauty and delicate art, was chosen by her, and Jae-hyun approved with a nod, a glint of approval in his eyes. Jae-hyun was not absent. He visited the construction site and the culinary laboratory frequently, though his visits were always brief and professional. However, each encounter was charged with a subtle tension. Their gazes met, and Min-ji felt an electric current run through her body. He always had a word of encouragement, a perceptive question about the progress, or a discreet compliment that warmed her heart. One afternoon, as Min-ji reviewed the kitchen plans with the architect, Jae-hyun appeared. He watched her for a moment, leaning against the door before approaching. "Chef Kim, I'm impressed with your dedication. You're on top of every detail." Min-ji turned, a slight blush on her cheeks. "Mr. Lee, this is my dream. I want it to be perfect." He nodded, his eyes fixed on her. "And I don't doubt it will be. But remember to rest. Passion is important, but health is fundamental." There was a genuine concern in his voice that touched her deeply. It wasn't just a boss speaking to his employee. It was something more. "I will, Mr. Lee," she promised, feeling the warmth of his gaze. As Jihwa took shape, Min-ji felt her confidence grow. She was no longer the young street cook, bent under the weight of debt and humiliation. She was a respected chef, a leader, a visionary. Her mother, recovering well and now home, was her biggest fan, calling every day for updates. The debt, once a monster, was now a distant memory, replaced by the promise of a bright future. One evening, Jae-hyun called a meeting with the entire Jiwa team to announce the opening date. The restaurant was almost ready, a sanctuary of modern design and Korean tradition. Min-ji stood beside him, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also an immense sense of pride. "Jiwa is not just a restaurant," Jae-hyun began, his voice resounding through the still empty hall. "It is the materialization of a vision, the celebration of elevated Korean cuisine. And all of this is thanks to Chef Kim Min-ji." He turned to her and their eyes met. "Your passion, your talent, and your resilience are the soul of this place." Applause erupted from the team, and Min-ji felt tears well up in her eyes. She looked at Jae-hyun, and in that moment the distance between them seemed to shrink. It wasn't just gratitude she felt, it was a deep admiration, an affection that transcended the professional. The journey had been long and arduous, but every step had led her there. Beside the man who had seen the light in her darkness, Jiwa was about to open its doors, and with it, a new chapter in their lives was about to begin. "The opening date," Jae-hyun continued, his voice filling the expectant silence, "will be 3 weeks from now. Prepare for an event that will mark the history of Korean cuisine." A buzz of excitement ran through the team. Min-ji felt a shiver. 3 weeks. It was an incredibly short time for the final touches, but she was ready. She looked at Jae-hyun, who returned her gaze with an intensity that made her heart race. There was a silent promise, a complicity that transcended the professional relationship. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Minji lived and breathed Jihwa. She supervised the installation of state-of-the-art kitchen equipment, trained her team with contagious passion, and finalized every detail of the menu. Tastings were held daily, with her adjusting seasonings and presentations until each dish was a masterpiece. The stress was immense, but the adrenaline and the vision of her dream becoming reality kept her moving. Jae-hyun continued to be a constant, though discreet presence. He would appear at the end of the day, watching her work with silent attention. On one of those evenings, as Minji reviewed the wine list with the sommelier, Jae-hyun approached. "Chef Kim," he said, his voice softer than usual, "you look exhausted." Minji smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "I'm fine, Mr. Lee, just the final stretch." He nodded, his dark eyes fixed on her. "I know how much this means to you, but remember, perfection isn't worth your health. Please, take a moment for yourself." He paused, and a slight blush rose to his neck. I worry about you." Those words, spoken with such unexpected sincerity, struck Minji deep in her soul. It wasn't the concern of an investor, but of someone who truly cared. "Thank you, Mr. Lee," she whispered, feeling her cheeks warm. "I'll try." In the week leading up to the opening, the media began to stir. Articles about the mysterious Jihwa and its young, talented chef, discovered by CEO Lee Jae-hyun, popped up in magazines and news portals. Minji, accustomed to the obscurity of her street stall, found herself facing cameras and journalists. She spoke with new confidence, her passion for cooking shining in every word. Jae-hyun was always nearby, watching her from the back of the room, a glint of pride in his eyes. The night before the grand opening, Minji was alone in the Jihwa kitchen. Everything was impeccable, gleaming under the lights. She touched the marble countertops, the copper utensils, feeling the texture of her dream. The memories of her stall, of the cold, the exhaustion, the humiliation, seemed distant, almost unreal. She had come so far, and all because of him, Lee Jae-hyun. The man who had rescued her, who had believed in her when no one else did, and who now occupied an increasingly larger space in her heart. She felt a presence and turned. Jae-hyun stood at the kitchen door, wearing a dark suit that accentuated his imposing figure. He held a small box. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice low. "I thought you'd be here too." He approached, extending the box. "It's a small gift. For tomorrow." Minji opened the box. Inside there was a delicate paper flower brooch made of polished silver, with a small diamond at its center. "It was the Jihwa. It's beautiful, Mr. Lee," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "But you'll..." "Why?" He gently touched the brooch. "To remind you that the ephemeral beauty and delicate art you create are eternal, and so you know that no matter how high you fly, I will be here to see you." Their eyes met, and the distance between them disappeared. There was no longer boss and employee, only a man and a woman, connected by something deep and undeniable. On opening night, Jihwa was dazzling. The dining room was filled with society personalities, food critics, and Seoul's elite. Minji, wearing the paper flower brooch on her impeccable chef's apron, commanded the kitchen with a mastery that surprised everyone. Every dish that left was an explosion of flavor and art, a testament to her vision. Jae-hyun was in the dining room, greeting guests, but his eyes always found Minji. When she finally emerged from the kitchen to receive the thunderous applause, he was there, waiting for her. He looked at her with a smile that was not subtle, but open and full of admiration. "You did it, Chef Kim," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You surpassed all expectations." Minji felt the warmth of his gaze, the hand he briefly placed on her shoulder. "We did it, Mr. Lee," she corrected, her voice choked. "Thanks to you." In that moment, amidst the euphoria and the glow of success, they knew that Jiwa was more than a restaurant. It was the stage for a story that was just beginning, a testament to a love that had blossomed from adversity and that now, under the spotlights, was ready to be revealed. The euphoria of Jiwa's opening night slowly dissipated, leaving behind the echo of applause and the lingering aroma of exquisite dishes. The last guests departed, food critics left with notebooks full of praise, and the team, exhausted but radiant, began to disperse. Minji, however, remained in the kitchen, watching her cooks finish cleaning. The paper flower brooch was still pinned to her apron, a shimmering reminder of Jae-hyun's silent promise. She felt weariness weigh on her shoulders, but a wave of satisfaction washed over her. Her dream, once a distant mirage, was now a palpable reality, a resounding success. She touched the marble countertop, feeling the coolness of the stone, and a genuine smile formed on her lips. When the last team member said goodbye, leaving her alone in the vastness of the impeccable kitchen, Minji took off her apron and folded it carefully. The silence was profound, almost reverent. It was then that she felt his presence. Jae-hyun stood at the kitchen door, exactly as the night before, but this time there was no box in his hands. His eyes, normally so restrained, gleamed with an intensity Minji had never seen. He wore the same dark suit, but his tie was slightly loosened, giving him a more relaxed, almost vulnerable air. "I thought you'd still be here," he said, his voice low, filling the silence. Minji turned completely to him, her heart beating at an accelerated rhythm. I couldn't leave. It's all so surreal." He nodded, taking a step forward, then another, until the distance between them was only a few meters. "You were magnificent, Chef Kim. Absolutely magnificent." The compliment, coming from him, carried a different weight. "We were, Mr. Lee. Without you, none of this would be possible." Jae-hyun slowly shook his head. "No, the talent, the passion, the soul. All of that is yours, Minji." He used her first name for the first time, and the sound sent a shiver down her spine. "I just saw the light." His eyes swept over her, from the tips of her loose hair to the brooch on the apron folded in her hands. There was a tenderness there that disarmed her. "I remember the first time I saw you," he continued, his voice almost a whisper. "At that stall, in the rain. You were exhausted, humiliated, but there was a dignity in you that captivated me, an unyielding strength." Minji felt tears well up in her eyes again. The memories of that time were painful, but his words transformed them into something beautiful, the beginning of everything. I don't know what to say, Mr. Lee." "Don't say anything," he said, taking the final step, stopping right in front of her. His hand reached out slowly, and he gently touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. His skin was warm against hers, and an electric current ran through her body. "Minji, I can't hide this anymore." Their eyes met, and the world around them disappeared. There was no more Jiwa, no critics, no debts, no social expectations. There was only the two of them under the soft kitchen lights. "From the moment I saw you, something changed in me," Jae-hyun confessed, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I started to see the world through your eyes, to feel your passion, your resilience. I admired you as a professional, but I love you as a woman, Minji." The words, spoken with such overwhelming sincerity, struck Minji deep in her soul. She knew she felt the same, but hearing him say it aloud, with that vulnerability in his eyes, was something entirely different. A tear trickled down her cheek, and he wiped it away with his thumb. "I do too, Mr. Lee," she whispered, her voice choked. "I love you too." A slow, dazzling smile spread across Jae-hyun's face, lighting up his eyes. He leaned his head down, and Min-ji felt her heart race. Their lips met in a soft kiss, hesitant at first, then deeper, more passionate. It was a kiss that carried the weight of an arduous journey, the overcoming of adversities, and the promise of a future. A kiss that sealed not only the success of a restaurant, but the beginning of a love forged in resilience and hope. When they parted, breathless, Jae-hyun hugged her tightly, and Min-ji buried her face in his shoulder, finally feeling at home. The paper flower brooch on her apron seemed to vibrate with the new energy that united them. Jiwa was just the beginning. The real feast was only just beginning. Jae-hyun's embrace was a safe harbor, a refuge Min-ji never knew she needed until she felt it. The scent of his woody cologne and the warmth of his body enveloped her completely, and she allowed herself to sink into that moment, silent tears wetting the fabric of his suit. They weren't tears of sadness, but of overwhelming joy, of profound relief at finally having found her place, not just in the culinary world, but in the heart of a man who truly saw her. When he gently pulled her away, her eyes were still moist, but a trembling smile played on her lips. Jae-hyun wiped away the last trace of a tear with his thumb, his dark eyes fixed on hers, a glint of adoration that made her feel like the most precious woman in the world. "Min-ji," he whispered, and the sound of her name, spoken with such tenderness, was a melody in her ears. "Are you all right?" She nodded, unable to form words. "More than all right, Mr. Lee." The formality was still a habit, but the intimacy between them made it almost a playful jest. He smiled, a smile that reached his eyes, dispelling his usual seriousness. "Jae-hyun, please call me Jae-hyun." The name slipped from her tongue, strange and sweet. Jae-hyun. He held her face between his hands, his thumbs caressing her cheeks. "I've waited so long for this, Min-ji, for this moment, for you." "Me too, Jae-hyun. I didn't know what it was, but I always felt something for you. From the day you appeared at my stall, like an angel." He chuckled softly, a husky, melodious laugh. "An angel? I was just a man who couldn't take his eyes off an extraordinary woman." He pulled her closer again, but this time, the embrace was lighter, more intimate. "I want you to know that there are no more debts, no more humiliation, no more fear. There's just the two of us, and Jiwa, which is proof of your talent and our story." They remained there, in the silence of the now empty kitchen, the soft lights of Jiwa witnessing the beginning of something new and profound. The paper flower brooch on her apron, which she still held, seemed to glow with its own light, a symbol of the beauty that had blossomed from adversity. When they finally left the restaurant, hand in hand, the city of Seoul slept under a starry sky. The fresh dawn breeze seemed to carry the promise of a new day, a new beginning. Jae-hyun opened the car door for her, and Min-ji got in, feeling as if in a dream. In the days that followed, Jihwa became the talk of the town. Food critics acclaimed Min-ji as a revelation, praising her creativity, her technique, and the soul she infused into every dish. Reservations sold out in minutes, and the restaurant quickly established itself as Seoul's most coveted culinary destination. But for Min-ji, the greatest success wasn't public recognition, but the quietness of the moments she shared with Jae-hyun. They met in secret, in intimate dinners at his apartment, in discreet strolls through Seoul's parks, or simply in long, deep conversations in the Jiwa kitchen after hours. Jae-hyun was a different man. The rigidity of his demeanor had softened, and his eyes, once so reserved, now held a constant tenderness when they looked at her. He listened to her with an attention no one else had ever given her, and made her feel seen, valued, and above all, loved. "I never thought I'd find something like this," he confessed one night as they watched the city lights from his apartment balcony. "My life was work, business, expectations. But you showed me a world I didn't even know existed, a world of passion, resilience, true love." Minji nestled into his arms, feeling safe and complete. "I owe everything to you, Jae-hyun. You pulled me from the darkness and gave me light. You gave me purpose, a dream. And now, you've given me your heart." He kissed the top of her head. "And you gave me mine back, Minji. I didn't know how empty it was until you filled it." Minji's journey from street stall to acclaimed chef had been extraordinary, but the greatest transformation was happening in her heart and Jae-hyun's. They knew that the outside world, with its expectations and prejudices, might try to challenge the love blossoming between a millionaire CEO and a former street cook. But in that moment, under the stars of Seoul, they were ready. Together, they had overcome adversity, built a dream, and forged a love that seemed unbreakable. Jihwa was their foundation, but the true legacy was the love they had built, a love that proved that dignity, passion, and hope could flourish in the most unexpected places, transforming lives and hearts forever. And the first dish to be served was that of inevitable exposure. The whispers began discreetly in the corridors of high society and behind the scenes of the corporate world. CEO Lee Jae-hyun, known for his austere demeanor and unwavering focus on business, was being seen with the new sensation chef, Kim Min-ji. Secret dinners, discreet meetings, the press, always hungry for a scandal, quickly caught wind of the story. The headlines, at first cautious, quickly became more speculative, hinting at an improbable romance between the magnate and the former street cook. Jae-hyun's family, especially his mother, expressed their disapproval. "Lee Jae-hyun, what are you doing?" she asked in a tense call. "This woman, she's not from our world. Think of the family's reputation, your position." Members of the company board also approached him, concerned about public image and potential distractions. But Jae-hyun was no longer the man who bowed to expectations. He had found something more valuable than any fortune or status. "Mother, Min-ji is the woman I love," he declared, his voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "She is worthy of all respect and admiration. If you cannot see that, then the problem is not hers, but yours." To the board, his response was equally incisive. "My personal life does not affect my ability to lead this company. On the contrary, it has made me a better man, more focused and more human. If that is a problem, then perhaps I am not the CEO you expect." Min-ji, in turn, faced her own whirlwind. The media attention was overwhelming, and curious, sometimes envious, glances followed her everywhere. But the Min-ji who had risen from the ashes of humiliation was no longer the same. She stood tall, her dignity unyielding. At Jiwa, she continued to create, to innovate, to prove her worth through her talent and passion. She knew her love for Jae-hyun was pure, and that was all that mattered. One evening, as they dined in his apartment with the city of Seoul glittering outside, Jae-hyun held her hand. "Min-ji, I know this isn't easy, but I want you to know that there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. I choose you, always." Min-ji looked into his eyes and saw there not just love, but an iron determination. "I know, Jae-hyun, and I choose you too. I don't care what they say or think. We built this together, and we'll face whatever comes, together." It was then that Jae-hyun smiled, a smile that warmed her soul. He knelt, taking a small velvet box from the inner pocket of his jacket. Min-ji's heart pounded. "Kim Min-ji," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "You have shown me the true meaning of life, of love, of resilience. You are my light, my inspiration. Will you be my wife?" Tears welled up in Minji's eyes, but this time they were tears of pure happiness. "Yes, Jae-hyun, yes, I will." He slid a simple yet elegant diamond ring onto her finger and pulled her into a tight embrace, sealing the promise of a future. The kiss that followed was a vow, a testament to a love that had overcome misery, humiliation, and social barriers. In the months that followed, the news of Lee Jae-hyun and Kim Min-ji's engagement dominated headlines. At first, there was shock, then a wave of admiration. Min-ji's story, the street cook who became an acclaimed chef and won the heart of a CEO, touched the public. Jiwa flourished even more, and Min-ji, alongside Jae-hyun, became a symbol of hope and overcoming. Jae-hyun's family, seeing their son's genuine happiness and Min-ji's unwavering dignity, gradually accepted the union. Jae-hyun's mother, at a dinner, even complimented one of Min-ji's dishes, a small but significant sign of truce. Lee Jae-hyun and Kim Min-ji, the CEO and the chef, the magnate and the former street cook, had broken down the barriers of their worlds. Their love, forged in adversity and resilience, was now a story of triumph. They had found in each other not just a partner, but a soulmate, and together they were ready to savor every moment of life's banquet. Jiwa was their foundation, but the true legacy was the love they had built, a love that proved that dignity, passion, and hope could flourish in the most unexpected places, transforming lives and hearts forever.